Greetings, Ma'am Sinang. Greetings to everyone who is going to watch this video. I am Megan Dorothy Judalberu, and as we all know, since we really didn't have enough time for all the other groups to report, I am here to deliver my particular part to you all through a video. And I want to apologize first kasi I don't have a particular device na I can use sana in order to depict or like to illustrate my PPT, but I will try my hardest to explain what I know about my particular topic. So, to give you an overview, okay, so the first, diba, sabi ko, tungkol sa Opium Wars and the Boxer Rebellion. So, those are the earlier rebellions made by the Chinese people. And as I have said kanina, these were the earlier times na parang paunti-unti na nagagrasp ng Chinese people yung sense of nationalism within them. However, they were still not as united and medyo kalat-kalat pa yung rebellions at that time. Wala talagang sense of unity. Kaya hindi siya completely nagsasucceed against the imperialist or against the Western influence. So as I have said, the Opium Wars, right, started, and Ma'am Sinang had always like emphasized the existence of that. So to give you like a very brief lang siguro na overview of like the Opium Wars, during the Opium Wars, maraming unequal treaties that were signed by the Chinese people with the Western influences, with the Britons, with the Britons specifically. So an example of those treaties would be Treaty of Nanjing and then Treaty of Tianjin. So these particular treaties parang mainly nagre-revolve siya around the economic sphere or like economic agreement between China and Britain, right? Kasi Britain at that time, or like the English, wanted to invade, not really invade, but like they wanted the market of China. Kasi because of the bigger population, again, these treaties were signed by the leaders of the Qing dynasty. And during that time of the unequal treaties, doon parang nagsistart yung European domination. Okay? So may European domination na in China. And in that European domination, doon parang mas nag-e-evolve yung sense of nationalism by the Chinese people themselves. It was being controlled na like slowly by the Europeans. So, there was a kind of rebellion. Again, there were rising rebellions against the European dominations. So that is when nationalism just started, like budding up. The midst of all these rebellions, there was this young intellectual na parang naging popular siya. And this young intellectual played a pivotal role in establishing that sense of nationalism within these Chinese people. And that particular person is Sun Yat-sen. And Sun Yat-sen was one of the main proponents of the nationalist party of the Chinese. I mean of the China at that time. And that particular Chinese nationalist party was called Kuomintang, or like KMT for short. In this particular time, there was a Chinese civil war. And Chinese civil war involved again a war inside the country between two different ideologies. Now, I have introduced to you the first party, and it was a nationalist party again, and it adhered to democracy. The second party that I am going to mention, it adhered to like communism ideologies. So it was mostly influenced by USSR at that time, or like the Soviet Union, kasi Soviet Union was the proponent of the communist ideologies. There was this Chinese Communist Party which was led by Mao Zedong, and it adhered to the communist ideologies of the Soviet Union. So they had this influence on Mao Zedong, and Mao Zedong was the one who kind of pushed the ideologies to the Chinese population. Back to the decline of the Qing dynasty. Bale, during the decline of the Qing dynasty, the Kuomintang, or the Chinese Nationalist Party, they kind of won. Like, they won on that time. However, Sun Yat-sen wasn't really able to actually lead them and unify them as a whole population. So he wasn't able to do that. So he decided to step down on that particular position, and then Yuan Shikai acted as the leader at that time. So to describe him as a leader briefly, he was very authoritarian, right? So he was very he used military like a lot, and there was basically little to no freedom. When Yuan Shikai died, it was the first non-dynastic government that the Chinese people had. So there was not a dynasty, and there was no kind of like executive power that was working at that time. Kaya medyo makalat siya talaga. Okay? So bumalik siya sa parang landlords, and landlords like leading this particular leading and guarding this particular like area of land. That was the ideologies of Sun Yat-sen was pursued by the Chinese Nationalist Party. However, the main proponent that really was the considered leader of the Chinese Nationalist Party is Chiang Kai-shek. Okay, so that is a very important name. Chiang Kai-shek actually took the leadership talaga sa Kuomintang at that time. And like the very prominent rivalry between the Chinese Nationalist Party and the Chinese Communist Party happened. So that is when like the Chinese Civil War was kind of taking place. It's Chinese Nationalist Party led by Chiang Kai-shek, and then Chinese Communist Party, which was founded by Mao Zedong. Okay, so the very difference between them is that these Chinese Nationalist Party, it mostly appealed to the intellectuals. However, the vast majority of the population in China was considered peasants, right? So they were considered peasants, and these ideologies of the Nationalist Party wasn't really appealing to them. And that is kind of the key characteristic why, like during the Civil War, Mao Zedong won. And the Chinese Communist Party won. Kasi the communist ideologies appealed to the masses themselves, to the peasants. There was this long march that happened, and this long march was still led by Mao Zedong, and it was kind of a retreat kasi Chiang Kai-shek was trying to hunt down the communists at that time, and like trying to lessen their numbers, ganon. So it was they were retreating from their original base to like be safe, ganon, to like survive. Basically was better at fighting the Japanese during the Sino-Japanese War, which is basically they were fighting against the Japanese military at that time kasi the Japanese was expanding. The CCP established the People's Republic of China. Okay? So now, since they have established this new government with the ideas of communism that they have gotten from the influence of the Soviet Union, let's discuss the political, economic, and cultural effects that have been implemented during this time. Well, unfortunately, I can't show you this particular model that I have found. Pero the on the top talaga is Politburo. Politburo stands for the highest decision-making body. Okay, so they are the highest decision-making body, and Mao Zedong is part of this. And then after Politburo would be the Central Committee. And then Central Committee is a larger body that included senior party officials and met periodically to discuss and approve major policies. So parang sila yung taga-approve ng ipapasang policies. And still, Mao Zedong was part of this, and he had a very huge influence kasi Politburo influences the Central Committee. And then under the Central Committee would be the National People's Congress. And this National People's Congress, it is the highest state legislative body which represented the will of the people. So National People's Congress, parang essentially they are representatives from the farmers, from the ordinary people, and these are the people na parang magre-represent ng will or ng mga kagustuhan ng masa, basically ng mga tao doon talaga sa ibaba. So, during that time, they utilize the top-down approach. Top-down approach is the hierarchical system of governance where political decisions flowed from top levels to the local levels. So parang Politburo had the last say, ganun, before actually implementing those to like the community themselves. Okay? But like there is this one feature, yung National People's Congress, and that kind of represents the will of those people talaga on the lower level. Ganun. However, again, the last say would be on those people on the top. Ganon. Features of this particular system of governance would be again centralized planning, kasi centralized siya in a way na parang the Politburo, parang every policy that will be approved is going to be centered around them. Parang it should be approved by them, it should be administered by them before it can be implemented all over the country. And then strict party control. And kasi there was no competition at that time, actually. And control of local governments. Now, one thing that I have understood is that during this time, there was no political freedom. Okay? So, with this lack of freedom, it was highly reflected during the sa National People's Congress kasi these representatives are going to be elected by the people. However, the people na parang pwede mong i-elect, parang these should be approved first by the Politburo or like by the highest decision-making body. So essentially, wala siyang freedom in a sense na you really can't choose on your own unless it is approved firsthand by the Politburo. So there was no political freedom at that time. And this actually is related to the cultural na parang effects of this particular governance. Because of this very strict party control, parang they actually, Mao Zedong launched this cultural revolution. Okay? So, during this cultural revolution, parang it was kind of Mao Zedong's way of retrieving his, victory, ganon, or like the sense of nationalism again for the people. And he was again, at that time, there were red guards, ganon, and they were trying to strengthen the communist ideologies of the youth at that time. So, at that time, if you had like a slightly different ideology that will contradict the communist ideologies, like it had a very big consequence for you. Okay, so people at that time were being killed, they were being prosecuted just because like if they had even the slightest hint of going against Mao Zedong's way of governance. So during the Cultural Revolution, intellectuals were very highly discriminated. Kumbaga, there was this set ideology na they have given to you, and you really do not have the freedom to actually move beyond that or to think for yourself. and that highly influenced the culture at that time. Ganon. So parang there was this homogenized culture for them. There was no political freedom. To talk economically, the most significant thing that I can find is the Great Leap Forward. So essentially, Great Leap Forward is like this 10-year plan na parang palaguin yung agricultural production of like the Chinese people in order for them to well sustain themselves, and also Mao Zedong wanted to industrialize like quickly ganon. So during that time parang the intellectuals were being sent doon sa areas ng farmers, ganon, and they were made to do this hard labor. And at the same time, he also wanted to industrialize quickly, so he opted to with making steel. Right? So steel was very important at that time sa pag-i-industrialize. However, it failed, lacked expertise basically, kasi they were just being taught like for the agricultural aspect of it, parang they were just farming and farming, pero there was no efficient planning as to how to actually slowly teach them, to integrate them to this heavy industry of developed machineries, ganon. Kaya the cultivation of steel, the steel making, it eventually was a disaster. It didn't yield great results in general. Like their economy at that time was kind of declining kasi Mao Zedong wanted to like he wanted to the agricultural products, parang gusto niyang ibenta rin, or like ibenta yun sa sa international markets. So he pressured these local na parang representatives to have a quota talaga na mapoproduce nila technically na crops. Pero these local leaders, parang they were lying kasi they were very much afraid kung anong gagawin sa kanila if they didn't reach the quota. Kaya there were a lot of lies at that time during that time. Kaya parang hindi nagtutugma. Kaya ang nangyayari, parang yung instead of their agriculture being self-sustaining sana para sa population ng peasants, ang nangyari parang nagkaroon ng kakulangan, inadequacy for them in order for them to compete with the international markets. Pinapadala yung crops na nakukuha nila sa international markets kasi ang pinaniniwalaan nila at that time, kasi sinasabi ng local leaders na naaabot nila tong ganitong quota, tapos ang nangyayari, parang most ng crops pinapadala sa external markets, and then walang natitira sa actual people here. Kaya at that time, mas lumaganap ang poverty instead of actually helping the people. Politically, they had this centralized planning. Nasa Politburo ang last say with administering the laws that were implemented on the lower levels. The top-down approach again. Culturally, they had no freedom to think for themselves, and they had this very homogenized ideology of like what should they think about, or like how they should this very homogenized culture that is very much centered about the communism ideologies of Mao Zedong. And then economically, again, for cultural impact, there was cultural revolution. As I have said, there were a lot of lives that were killed. And then for economics, there was Great Leap Forward, which devastated their economy more, and very much propagated more of like their line of poverty at that time. So that ends my report. I hope you understood what I have explained, and I hope na kahit there is a lack of visual aid, a lack of PPT, I am still understandable and my points are still being grasped efficiently. That's it. Thank you.